Hello and welcome to Unpacking Aries Stereotypes. This is the final or first of this series, depending on how you're going to view it, since this is the last one I'm releasing. It just worked out that way. Yeah, I'm excited to get into one of my favorite signs. So let's do this thing. Okay, so the first Aries stereotype we're going to get into is that they are loud, obnoxious, childish, that kind of thing. And this is not true of all Aries. It really depends on someone's entire birth chart. That's good to keep in mind for every single sign stereotype. So, not every Aries is going to be loud or loud around anyone. But that being said, Aries is the baby of the zodiac. It's the child, it's the toddler. Like every single zodiac represents a time in your life, and they're the very first time of your life. So they're the baby. So, yes, it makes sense that there's a stereotype about them being kind of childish and immature because that's the energy that they kind of embody. But if you know children well, there's actually a lot of wisdom within children, and they're not always immature, and they have a lot of wisdom and different perspectives than an adult. Like Aries is associated to the Fool card, and I really strongly associate it to the Fool card because the Fool card, how many times am I going to say that? The Fool is like associated to playing life by your own rules, not following what society expects of you, really looking at life in a way where it's new eyes, you're doing whatever the fuck you want, and nothing is going to stop you from falling off that cliff or like making mistakes or doing whatever you want. And Aries are actually, although they might like be very kind of childish and obnoxious and seeming to not care about other people, and they're like selfish or whatever, they actually really see through bullshit and see oh my god, they see the ridiculousness of like rules and expectations in society, and they're all about pushing back or just not giving a shit about them. And it almost seems like they're not aware that they're pushing back on those, which sometimes that's true, but some Aries are actually very like aware and intentional with their actions of pushing away from what's not considered polite or what's not considered acceptable, you know? And a lot of the times, like, with children are unaware of what an inside voice is versus what an outside voice is. So a lot of the times, Aries are just very unaware of how loud and obnoxious they're coming across as. So it's not something that they're trying to do intentionally, it's just their essence. They're going to express themselves in whatever way that feels most authentic to them, and if that happens to be loud, then it happens to be loud. And I wouldn't take too much offense from it. The next stereotype that we're going to get into is that Aries are hot-headed and impulsive, and they like jump to conclusions and stuff like that. So another important thing to know about Aries is that Aries, its ruler is Mars, and Mars is all about action and very masculine energy of moving forward and like anger and stuff. And like Mars in Roman mythology is the god of war, and like anger. So that's kind of where that stereotype comes from, is that Aries can be quick to anger. But the thing is that Aries are also very quick to diffuse the anger. They're kind of the people where something could upset them very easily and they like get offended and take something the wrong way, and then as soon as they realize that that person wasn't saying what they thought they were saying, then they'll be like, oh yeah, fine, whatever, I forget about it. And then if the other person brings that up and be like, oh, I'm really sorry about that, they'll be like, oh, like what are you talking about? They've already forgotten about it. They're very, very quick to forgive, but then they're also very quick to assume the worst sometimes, or like think that what they heard is like what they heard is like associated to like what they think it is, like their ego or whatever. But while it might be easy to kind of offend a Aries, they're not gonna hold a grudge with you. Aries are not ones to fucking hold grudges because they ain't got time for that. No, they do not have time for that. And yeah, because their planetary ruler is Mars, they're a lot more comfortable with action rather than thinking. So Aries are really not the ones to think before acting. That's just how they process this world and how they learn. So they can learn from mistakes of acting too quickly, you know. They can get easily riled up and like easily excited and optimistic about things, and then just as easily that flame will like be out. They're very much that type of like, out of all the fire signs, they're the type of fire sign that most easily ignites and then diffuses, whereas the other ones are a little bit like different in terms of their fire energy. Now, the next stereotype that we're going to get into is that Aries are aggressive, passionate, they're like too much, they're just like very intense. And not quite in the same way that Scorpios are intense, but it's a silent sort of intense, but like Aries are just like very like intense physically, like how they express themselves. They could be like moving their body around a lot, or their voice gets really loud very quickly, or they just like make a lot of eye contact and stuff. And sometimes Aries' passion and excitement can come across as, oh, they're angry at me, vice versa. Like sometimes their anger can translate into passion or excitement. And honestly, those things are often like correlated for Aries. Like anger and passion, they're not necessarily the same thing to an Aries, but they very much overlap a lot of the times. And people will sometimes take an Aries anger or passion kind of too seriously, being like, oh, why are they making such a big deal about this? But to an Aries, it's not that they want whatever they're talking about to be taken seriously. It's just kind of like how they let out their energy and how they express themselves. So it's like, it's not that they're actually that attached to a certain outcome or that mad about something. It's just that they're like kind of the ones to be like, oh my God, this drama just happened to me at my work or whatever. Let me tell you it. Like, they make it like very dramatic. This is like with many fire signs, but really is like they're not really that pissed off at like this little like minor thing that happened, but how they're gonna process through it is making it so it's a very big deal. Also, another very important thing to note about Aries is that Aries rules the self, the first house. Aries is all about authenticity. It's like hard for them to be fakers. It's hard for them not to be themselves, which I really fucking admire. I love Aries for that. And so sometimes like their self-expression, which is completely unfiltered, can just be a lot for people, and they're not used to people not filtering or not like dampening their self-expression, just because that's kind of the world we live in, where we've learned to be less authentic and cater our personalities to whoever we're talking to. Like Aries is totally the vibe where they don't talk differently to their boss, to their best friend, to their like parents. It can often be like they talk the same to all of them, because why would they not be themselves? Why would they like try to suppress that part of themselves, since that's what Aries is like all about? And this kind of brings us into another stereotype, is that Aries are super direct and super blunt, which not everyone appreciates because it can come across as kind of offensive sometimes. But they are brutally honest because, again, they're all about authenticity and self-expression. Why would they hold back something if that's what they're feeling, you know? They are not ones for beating around the bush. That is not how they deal with confrontation. Aries are very good at dealing with confrontation, especially if you know someone that has an Aries Mars. They're going to be ones to be like, okay, I'm jumping in on the conflict. Let's fucking go. They're not trying to be assholes and they're not trying to rile people up, but often them seeming all intense and riled up can make other people riled up. And so sometimes it's not always helpful for an Aries to like jump into something that didn't need to be ruffled, you know? And another thing to note, like, Aries are really not ones to judge and scrutinize people. Honestly, if you always come back to the fact that Aries are the baby and like the child of the zodiac, like children, they don't know better. Like when they say like, I don't like that dress you're wearing, like that's not them trying to necessarily be mean. It's just them expressing something that they see, and it's not personal. Aries is not personal, and they're not secretly judging you behind your back, even though it may come across that way, of that they're saying, I don't like you, or I don't like what you did. Like, they're really just expressing something else that's not necessarily related to you, just because they're not the most self-aware or like aware of like the social dynamics, because yeah, they are quote unquote like a child, and a child doesn't know. A child's just fucking existing, right? Another stereotype that I've kind of mentioned is that they have lots of bursts of energy, so they're energetic, but they never seem to follow through. And that makes it hard for Aries to pursue things that they want to do, or like pursue things long term. For instance, if someone has like an Aries of Venus, they could be quick to have crushes on people and then just as quickly come out of that crush and be like, ew, never mind. So sometimes they can be considered a bit of like a serial dater, or like a serial like starts a project and then stops the project and never like finishes it. Yeah, and it's not like the Aries isn't necessarily passionate about what project they started or whatever, or like doesn't want to finish the thing. It's just very hard for the Aries to finish the thing because their energy levels are so fucking up and down that they can't really rely on themselves for that. Or they just find something that's a lot more interesting that they'd rather want to be pursuing. So they could get like really hyper fixated on something one moment, and then like the next be really more interested in something else and then not give a shit about that thing, or just care less about it. Aries are also prone to becoming really bored very quickly and needing like constant or at least consistent stimulation of like what interests them and stuff like that. Like honestly, Aries is so like ADHD vibes. Like if you like think of a child that's like undiagnosed ADHD and they're like running around all the time and like can't sit still. Like that's so the stereotype of Aries. Another interesting stereotype is that Aries are the rebel, like they're defensive, they hate being told what to do, they have to be the leader and their own boss. Like if anyone threatens their autonomy, they fucking go bonkers. They can't with that because again, they're all about the self and self-expression. And if it ever feels like someone's suppressing them for any reason at all, they're not going to stand for that and they're going to fucking leave that situation or tell that person off. Like for many Aries or people with strong Aries placements, if someone tells them what to do, that sometimes feels like a personal attack just because independence and autonomy is so it's so part of them that it feels like when someone's forcing them to do something or telling them to do something that they have to do, that it feels like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that thing because if I were to do that thing, that's taking away my independence and myself and what I want to be doing. So, yeah, if anything threatens their essence of self expression and being able to do what they want and their freedom, then they might get angry at that person or give up on that situation or find something else. So, yeah, like a lot of Aries might have problems with higher authority, being told what to do, like, especially in like school. If you had like a lot of strong Aries placements or whatever, then you might not have done so well at teachers being like, this is what you have to do now. But then it's like, actually, that's not what I feel like doing. I'd rather do this other thing. So you kind of like, it's very like reverse psychology of like someone to the Aries like, do this thing. And then they're like, okay. And then they do the opposite thing. So it's kind of funny. And that reverse psychology thing really reminds me of The Fool, where the whole thing of it is doing the exact opposite of what society expects of you, or just going down a different path that is not like what that you're not told to go down. You're following your own path. Fucking Aries are the trailblazer. That is like absolutely the vibe of an Aries. Another stereotype is, which is kind of interesting because it's like a more positive one, is that they're very charismatic and that they're a good leader. It's very King of Wands energy if the Aries is at like a very good point, like a very high vibes good person, because they understand the value of autonomy and stuff like that, and so they aren't ones to force people into doing things that they want them to do or anything like that. It's more like they're good at inspiring people to take action, but then everyone takes action in their own individual way. And like Aries is not about micromanaging. That is not their thing. Like if you've had a boss that's like good and very chill and lets you do what you need to do and like lets you do things your own way so long as it gets done, they could have been an Aries or like had Aries placements or something. I don't know. And Aries are pretty good at being decisive, but they could change their mind a lot. So if you have a boss like that, it might be like a little bit frustrating where the boss is like, okay, do this thing. This is what we're gonna do. And then being like, never mind, that's not gonna work anymore. We're gonna do this thing. But it comes from a well-meaning place. And again, they're not the greatest at looking at the group and how that affects the group. Because, you know, they're opposite of Libra, which is all about the group and about partnership and stuff like that. Because Aries is so focused on the self and knows that so well, a lot of the times they don't stop to think, okay, wait, how is this actually affecting everyone as a group, not just like individually? And there's one amazing reason why Aries are as charismatic as they are, and why so many people seem gravitated towards them and really love them and appreciate their presence, is because they are like the most authentic sign out there in the zodiac. They're the most authentic sorts of people that you're going to come across. They do not hold themselves back. They are fully themselves. They don't are not going to fear being judged or care what people think about them if an Aries is in like a really like, you know, grounded place and stuff like that. Like a lot of Aries can be very, very self-aware and have issues with that where they're super self-conscious. But I'm mostly just talking about like high vibe, like Aries, where the pure Aries essence is very like they don't care what people think kind of thing. And people really admire that and can sense that being around an Aries. And it's really like lovely, and people are so attracted to being around Aries because then they seem to come out of their shells and feel more welcome and at home to be themselves because they're seeing this other person being themselves. And so it's just like the love for seeing someone that is truly being authentic to themselves, and then just loving the feeling of actually being able to be yourself because the other person is also being themselves. Because, yeah, it's pretty hard for someone who's themselves not to be liked by other people who like appreciate authenticity and who also like to be themselves. You're going to see a lot of hate towards Aries for people that are very insecure about themselves and don't like parts about themselves. So when they see someone be so authentic, they're going to see parts of themselves in them that reflecting to them that they don't like. So yeah, that could be like a reason why a lot of Aries, they attract a lot of like combative energy, and a lot of people being like, you're fucking stupid, or like them bullying them, is just because they're so themselves, and that irks people, you know? Also, going back to like the boss thing, like, yeah, Aries can be like super, super chill bosses, let you do what you need to do in your own way. But if you cross a line that crosses their freedom or like their autonomy, right? Or if you cross another person's line, or like, you know, another coworker's line, or another person that's like within that group, or even like a stranger. If a Aries sees you like doing an injustice to a stranger, or is like being rude to them, they'll be like, hey, fucking take it back. Like, don't do that. They have a very strong sense of humanity and individuality, and that all being respected. That is like very concrete in Aries value systems of being able to be yourself and not getting shit for it, and free will and all that. So if you cross their boundary or cross someone else's boundary or insult someone, then they're going to be quick to react to that. And a lot of the times it'd be like, oh, I wasn't trying to, you know, offend that person or whatever. That's not what I was trying to say. Then they will back off once they realize, oh, I just like made a simple mistake. They're not ones to really like, you know, like a high vibe Aries is not gonna like hate themselves for like, you know, assuming the wrong thing in a situation, because they're very easy to like apologize and be like, oh, that was like totally my bad. And that's why they make a really good boss, is because they're like, their employees don't have to be scared at being like, hey, I think you like made a little mistake. And they'll be like, oh my god, like you're totally right. I did, after they like realize what the actual situation was. And as you know, a lot of bosses are not like that and do not like to be told that they did something wrong. So gotta love Aries leaders. Anyways, I think that's all the Aries stereotypes that I have for today. If there's anything that you would like to add on, since I'm sure I missed some things, please feel free to do so in the comments. Would love to know that you're watching and that you care. Yeah, and like let me know if this resonated with you, or if this like resonates to people that you know in your life that have strong Aries placements. But yeah. As I said in the beginning, Aries are genuinely like one of my favorite signs just because they're so authentic to themselves, which I fucking love. I'm all about that. And they're just like very fun. They're very like fun people. They're here to have a good time. But yeah, I'm like, where the Aries are, I've like realized I'm like, there's not many Aries that I know very closely in my life. So I'm like, where the fuck you at? Tell me in the comments if you're fucking Aries, like virtual high five, acknowledgement, love you, fucking happy birthday. Happy birthday if it's already happened. Happy early birthday if it's yet to come. But yeah, I love you, Aries. Those are all the stereotypes, and I guess I won't see you in the next one because this is the last one. But if you want to check out all the other zodiac signs, I have an entire playlist on my channel unpacking every single one of the zodiac stereotypes. So yeah, I'll see you there. I'll see you around. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.